Imagine catching your husband red-handed, deleting your messages under the flicker of a stormy Houston night, only to realize he's been rewriting your reality for years. What if the man who sent you roses was secretly recording your breakdowns to bury you? I'm Michaela Anderson, and this is how I uncovered a web of lies that'll shock you to your core, starting with one tiny slip he couldn't hide. Hit that subscribe button and help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. I've got a story you won't believe. The rain hammered against the windows of our Houston apartment, a relentless drumbeat that matched the pounding in my chest. Lightning flashed, illuminating the sleek kitchen where I stood, clutching my phone like it was a lifeline. I'd just walked in from a long day at the Houston Tribune, my hair still damp from the storm, when I caught him, Jason, my husband of 5 years, hunched over the counter, his fingers flying across my phone screen, deleting something, my messages, my proof, my sanity. Jason, why are you deleting my messages? My voice trembled, sharp with accusation as I dropped my bag on the floor. What are you hiding? He straightened up fast, too fast, that familiar smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. His dark hair was perfectly tousled, his navy suit crisp even after a day at Sterling and Pierce. He looked every bit the charming financial advisor I'd fallen for, except now that charm felt like a mask. Michaela, don't start this again, he said, his tone smooth but edged with impatience. You're imagining things. I was just clearing out spam. You know how cluttered your phone gets? Spam. I stepped closer, my boots squeaking on the hardwood. I saw you open my texts, Jason. Those weren't ads. Who were you texting behind my back? His smirk faltered for a split second, but he recovered, leaning casually against the counter like we were discussing dinner plans. You're paranoid, just like your mom was, he said, his voice dropping low, almost a whisper. Remember how she used to think everyone was out to get her? I'm trying to help you, babe. That hit me like a punch. My mom, her nervous breakdowns, her endless conspiracy theories, had always been my weak spot, and Jason knew it. He wielded it like a weapon, slicing through my confidence. I gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles whitening against the cool granite. The storm outside roared louder, but inside, a different tempest was brewing. Don't bring her into this, I snapped, my throat tight. Just tell me the truth for once. The truth? He laughed, a short, hollow sound that echoed off the stainless steel fridge. The truth is, you've been a mess since that last story of yours got trashed. What was it Rachel said? Something's off? Maybe she's right. Maybe you're losing it. Rachel, my editor, my lifeline at the Tribune. I'd seen her name flash on my phone just before I walked in. A missed call and a text. Michaela, we need to talk about your last story. Something's off. I hadn't had time to read it fully before Jason snatched the phone from my hands. Now, with him standing there, smug and untouchable, I wondered. Did he know about Rachel's message? Was he trying to bury it? Give me my phone, I demanded, holding out my hand. My voice shook, but I forced it steady. I wasn't going to let him twist this around again. Not tonight. He sighed, theatrical and patronizing, and slid the phone across the counter. Fine, check it yourself, but don't come crying to me when you realize it's all in your head. I grabbed it, my fingers trembling as I unlocked the screen. The text from Rachel was gone, wiped clean like it had never existed. My inbox was pristine, too pristine. No spam, no nothing, just a blank slate staring back at me. My stomach lurched. You deleted it, I whispered, more to myself than to him. You deleted her message. Her? Jason raised an eyebrow, feigning confusion. Who's her? Michaela. You're spiraling. Maybe you should call Dr. Martinez again. Get those meds adjusted. Dr. Martinez, the therapist he'd insisted I see last year after my big investigative piece on corporate fraud got rejected. I'd been a wreck, doubting every lead, every instinct. And Jason had been there, oh so helpful, suggesting therapy. Now his mention of it felt like a threat. I glared at him, the rain streaking down the windows behind him like tears I couldn't shed. I'm not the one who needs help here, I said, my voice rising. I saw what you did, Jason. I'm not crazy. He stepped closer, his smirk fading into something colder, more dangerous. You sure about that? Because from where I'm standing, you're one step away from turning into your mom, alone, ranting about shadows that aren't there. He paused, letting the words sink in. I'm all you've got, Michaela. Don't push me away. The room spun. Lightning cracked outside, casting his face in stark white light, and for a moment he looked like a stranger. 5 years of marriage, 5 years of flowers delivered to my desk, late-night talks about my articles, his warm hand in mine at charity galas, and now this. Doubt crept in, slithering through my mind like the rain down the glass. Was I imagining it? Was I overreacting, like he said? But then my phone buzzed in my hand, snapping me out of it. A new text, from an unknown number. Check your drafts. Marae R. Rachel. It had to be. My heart raced as I swiped to the drafts folder, something I never used. There it was. An unsent message I didn't write. Makala, your last story hit too close to Sterling and Pierce. Be careful. Jay's involved. I froze, the words burning into my brain. Jason was still watching me, his eyes narrowed, but he couldn't see the screen, not yet. Who's that? He asked, his voice casual but tight like a coiled spring. No one, I lied, slipping the phone into my pocket. My mind raced. Rachel's warning meant Jason wasn't just messing with my head, he was messing with my work, my life. And if he'd deleted her first message, what else had he buried? Dinner's ready, he said, turning to the stove like nothing had happened. Let's eat and forget this nonsense, okay? I nodded, forcing a smile, but my hand stayed on the phone in my pocket. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one brewing inside me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't my mom. And whatever Jason was hiding, I was going to find it. The crack in our perfect little mirror had just split wide open. And there was no going back. The next morning, the rain had stopped, leaving Houston wrapped in a muggy haze that clung to my skin as I sat at my desk in the Houston Tribune newsroom. My laptop hummed softly, the screen glowing with a draft of my latest article, a piece on shady real estate deals I'd been chasing for weeks. But my eyes kept drifting to the bouquet of roses on the corner of my desk, their red petals too vibrant against the gray cubicle walls. Jason had sent them yesterday, a note tucked inside. For my brilliant wife, keep shining, love, Jay. 5 years ago, that gesture would have made my heart skip. Now, it just made my stomach twist. I wasn't always like this, second-guessing every flower, every word. Back when I met Jason, I was Michaela Anderson, the Tribune's rising star, a 29-year-old reporter with a knack for sniffing out corruption. I'd just broken a story about a local oil baron skimming profits, and the newsroom buzzed with my name. That's where Jason found me, at a charity gala I was covering for the paper. He strode over in a tailored suit, all charm and confidence, a glass of champagne in hand. A beautiful journalist with brains and ambition, he'd said, his voice warm enough to make me blush. What more could a man want? Looking back, I should have caught the red flag right there. How he lingered on beautiful before brains. But I was swept up in it, the whirlwind romance, the way he'd show up at my desk with coffee or whisk me off to rooftop dinners overlooking the city. My colleagues swooned. He's a keeper, Michaela. But Rachel, my editor and closest friend, wasn't so sure. One day, as Jason left with a wave and another bouquet, she leaned over my desk, her sharp brown eyes narrowing. He's too perfect, Michaela, she said, tapping a pen against her coffee mug. That's a red flag. Men like that don't love you, they love controlling you. I brushed her off. Rachel had been in the game too long. 15 years of digging through corporate dirt had made her cynical. Besides, Jason wasn't like that. He supported me, cheered me on. Or so I thought. The changes crept in so slowly I barely noticed. First, it was the promotion to senior investigative reporter, a job I'd dreamed of. I came home buzzing with excitement, but Jason's smile didn't reach his eyes. More hours away from home, he said, stirring a pot of chili on the stove. You're already so stressed, babe. I'm just looking out for you. I pushed back. This is my shot, Jason. I've worked for this. His face tightened, and he set the spoon down hard. Remember that oil story? You were a wreck. Up all night, jumping at shadows. I don't want to see you break again. He was right. I'd been a mess then, doubting every lead after he'd casually questioned my sources over dinner one night. Are you sure that guy's legit? Sounds shaky to me. I'd laughed it off, but the doubt stuck. A week later, I turned down the promotion. Rachel's disappointment was palpable. She stopped our weekly coffee chats, and I told myself it was fine. Jason just wanted what was best for me. But last night's fight, him deleting my messages, Rachel's cryptic draft, cracked that narrative wide open. I pulled out my phone, rereading her warning. Your last story hit too close to Sterling and Pierce. Be careful. Jay's involved. Sterling and Pierce. Jason's firm, my rejected real estate piece, had circled around suspicious land deals tied to a shell company. I'd never connected it to his work. Why would I? He was just an advisor, not a player. Or was he? I needed answers. Ignoring the roses, I grabbed our shared laptop from my bag, the one we used for bills and Netflix binges, and logged in. Jason's email was still synced from last week when he'd asked me to check something for him. My fingers hesitated over the keys, guilt prickling my spine. This wasn't me, snooping, doubting. But then I remembered his smirk, his jab about my mom, and I typed his name into the search bar. Most of it was mundane, client meetings, golf invites, but one subject line stopped me cold. Dismissed case confidentiality reminder. I clicked. It was from a lawyer dated 3 years ago, just before our wedding. Mr. Carter, per our agreement, the fraud allegations against you have been settled out of court. All records are sealed. Please ensure no further inquiries arise. Fraud allegations. My breath caught. Jason had never mentioned a lawsuit. He'd told me his career was spotless, a steady climb at Sterling and Pierce. I scrolled further, finding a reply from him. Understood. No loose ends here. The newsroom noise faded, phones ringing, keyboards clacking, as my mind raced. Fraud. Sealed records. Was this why he'd pushed me away from investigative work? To keep me from digging too close? I closed the laptop, my hands shaking, when my phone buzzed again. Another text from Rachel. Meet me at Crossroads Diner, 1 p.m. Bring the laptop. I glanced at the clock, 11:45. I could make it. But as I stood, a shadow fell over my desk. Jason. He was there, in the flesh, holding a takeout bag from my favorite Thai place. Surprise, he said, grinning like nothing had happened. Thought I'd bring you lunch. My heart thudded. He wasn't supposed to be here. His office was across town. Jason, I managed, forcing a smile. What are you doing here? Checking on my wife, he said, setting the bag down next to the roses. His eyes flicked to the laptop, then back to me. You okay? You look pale. I'm fine, I lied, sliding the laptop into my bag. Just a busy day. He nodded, but his gaze lingered, sharp and searching. Good. Don't work too hard, babe. You know how you get. He kissed my forehead and left, whistling as he went. I watched him disappear into the elevator, the Thai food untouched. The perfect husband, the perfect facade, and I was starting to see the cracks. I grabbed my bag and headed for the diner. Whatever Rachel knew, it was time I faced it, because if Jason was hiding a lawsuit, what else was he burying? And how deep did this go? The Crossroads Diner smelled of burnt coffee and grease, a stark contrast to the polished newsroom I'd left behind. I slid into a cracked vinyl booth across from Rachel, the shared laptop heavy in my bag as I set it on the table. She looked up from her untouched mug, her short black hair framing a face etched with worry. You brought it? She asked, her voice low, eyes flicking to the door like she expected someone to barge in. Yeah, I said, patting the bag. And I found something. Jason's got a past he didn't tell me about. A fraud case, settled out of court 3 years ago. My words tumbled out, fueled by the adrenaline that had been simmering since last night. Rachel's warning about Sterling and Pierce, Jason's sudden lunch visit. It was all starting to connect, and I needed her to fill in the gaps. She leaned forward, her pen tapping a nervous rhythm against the table. I knew it. That real estate story you wrote, the one the board killed last month, it wasn't just bad timing. I dug into the shell company you flagged, Horizon Ventures. Guess who's tied to it? She paused, letting the question hang. Sterling and Pierce, Jason's firm. My stomach dropped. You're saying he tanked my story? I'd poured weeks into that piece, late nights chasing leads, interviews with whistleblowers, only for the editors to reject it with vague excuses about unverified sources. Jason had been there through it all, nodding sympathetically, suggesting I take a break. You're pushing too hard, babe. Maybe they're right. I'd believed him. God, I'd been so blind. Not just tanked it, Rachel said, pulling a USB drive from her pocket and sliding it across the table. Covered it up. This has encrypted files I pulled from a source at Sterling and Pierce. Financial records, emails. I haven't cracked them yet, but your name's in there, Michaela. He's been using you. I stared at the USB, its sleek black surface catching the diner's dim light. Using me how? My voice cracked, but I didn't care. The pieces were falling together too fast. His deleted messages, the lawsuit, now this. I needed to hear it all. Rachel hesitated, then sighed. I think he's been feeding you dud leads to keep you off the real story. Horizon's a front. Money laundering, tax evasion, the works. Sterling and Pierce is knee-deep, and Jason's not just an advisor. He's a player. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Jason. Where are you? Tie's getting cold. My pulse spiked. He thought I was still at the office. I typed a quick lie. Running an errand. Back soon. And shoved the phone away. Keep going, I told Rachel, my hands trembling as I picked up the USB. She nodded. There's more. I heard Jason on a call last week. Overheard it at that charity board meeting he crashed. He was talking to someone named Sarah. She promised to keep quiet, he said. Don't make me regret this. Sounded like a threat. Sarah? The name hit me like a jolt. Sarah Mitchell, Jason's colleague at Sterling and Pierce. Blonde, sharp, always lingering too long at office parties. He'd sworn she was just a work friend, but I'd seen them laughing together at Cafe Luna once, months ago. He'd brushed it off. Client lunch, babe, you're overthinking it. And I'd let it go. Now it gnawed at me. What's she got to do with this? I don't know yet, Rachel admitted. But she's in those files. We need to crack them. I nodded, my mind racing. I had to see for myself. Let's do it now. Pulled the laptop from my bag, plugged in the USB, and watched as a password prompt popped up. Rachel muttered a curse. She didn't have the key, but I did. Jason used the same password for everything. Michaela 1990. My birth year. Arrogant bastard. I typed it in and the screen unlocked, revealing a maze of folders. Horizon, S&P internal, I clicked personal first, my gut screaming it held answers. A subfolder labeled SM caught my eye. Sarah Mitchell. Inside were emails, dozens of them, stretching back years. One from last month. Jay, she's getting close again, distract her. His reply, on it. She'll drop it like last time. My breath hitched. They were talking about me. Another email, older, from before we married. She's perfect, ambitious but naive, easy to steer. Sarah's response, just don't let her dig too deep. We can't afford it. The diner spun around me. Jason hadn't just lied. He targeted me. From the start. I clicked out, hands shaking, and opened S&P internal. Financial records spilled across the screen, wire transfers, offshore accounts, sums in the millions. One name kept popping up. Jason Carter. Not an advisor. A puppet master. Rachel grabbed my arm. Michaela, you okay? No, I whispered, slamming the laptop shut. He's been playing me for years. And Sarah, she's in on it. We need more, Rachel said, her voice urgent. Concrete proof, something he can't spin. I nodded, shoving the USB into my pocket. Cafe Lena. He's been there with her. I saw them once. Maybe they've got security footage, receipts, something. I stood, determination burning through the shock. I'm going. Wait, Rachel called, but I was already halfway to the door. The diner's bell jangled as I stepped into the humid afternoon, my boots pounding the pavement toward Cafe Luna. It was a 10-minute walk, and every step fueled my anger. Years of doubting myself, abandoning leads, shrinking under his "you're overreacting." All because he'd planned it. The cafe's neon sign buzzed as I pushed through the door. The barista, a lanky kid with a nose ring, looked up. Hey, welcome back, he said, grinning. You're Jason's wife, right? My heart stopped. You know him? Oh yeah, he said, wiping the counter. Him and Sarah, they've been regulars for years, corner table every Tuesday. Even before you, I think. Before me. The words sank in like lead. I forced a smile. Got any receipts lying around? I'm tracking expenses for him. He shrugged. Maybe in the back. I'll check. As he disappeared, I sank into a chair, the USB burning a hole in my pocket. Jason and Sarah, years deep, fraud, lies, me as their pawn. The evidence was piling up, and I wasn't stopping until I had it all. The air in Cafe Luna hung heavy with the scent of espresso as I clutched the receipt the barista had dug up from the back. A crumpled slip dated 2 weeks ago, showing Jason and Sarah's usual order. 2 lattes, 1 croissant, paid in cash. My fingers tightened around it, the paper crinkling as I slipped it into my pocket next to the USB. It wasn't much, but it was proof. Proof he'd lied about never seeing her outside work. I thanked the kid and bolted back to the Houston Tribune, my mind a whirlwind of anger and purpose. Whatever game Jason was playing, I was done being his pawn. Back at my desk, I plugged the USB into my laptop again, diving deeper into the S&P internal folder. The financial records painted a damning picture. Millions funneled through Horizon Ventures, tied to a charity I'd once covered for the paper, Hope Rising. Jason had chaired their last fundraiser, smiling for photos while I wrote glowing articles. Now, I saw the truth. He'd siphoned donations into offshore accounts. My work, my credibility, had been his shield. I felt sick, but I kept digging, saving screenshots to a hidden drive. I needed airtight evidence before confronting him. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of it. Jason again. Home soon? Major favorite. Lasagna? The normalcy of it twisted the knife deeper. I typed back, finishing up, be there in an hour. I had to play along, keep him off guard. But as I shut the laptop, a shadow loomed over me. Jason's mother, Clara, standing there in a tailored coat, her silver hair pulled tight, her blue eyes darting nervously. Clara? I stood, startled. She never visited me at work. What are you doing here? I need to talk, she said, her voice trembling. Somewhere private. I hesitated. Jason's family was his domain, not mine, but her pale face and the way she glanced over her shoulder convinced me. I led her to a quiet conference room, shutting the door behind us. She sank into a chair, her hands wringing the handbag. I overheard you and Jason last night, she began, barely above a whisper. The fight in the kitchen. I was on the phone. He didn't know I'd called to check in. My pulse quickened. What did you hear? Enough, she said, her eyes meeting mine. He said you're paranoid, like your mom. But then he laughed. Said you'd be easy to handle, just like I was with Robert. She swallowed hard. Michaela, Jason learned it all from his father. The lies, the control, it's how they operate. I stared at her, the pieces clicking into place. Robert Carter, Jason's dad, was a retired lawyer with a reputation for winning unwinnable cases. I'd always assumed his wealth came from hard work, not manipulation. What do you mean, like you? I asked, leaning forward. Clara's lips trembled. 30 years ago, Robert made me think I was losing my mind. Forgetting meetings, misplacing things. It kept me quiet while he built his empire. Jason watched it all. I thought he'd be different with you, but... She trailed off, pulling a small leather notebook from her bag. I found this in Robert's old files after your fight. It's his handwriting. Accounts, names, dates. Sterling and Pierce is in there. So is Horizon. I took the notebook, flipping it open. Pages of meticulous notes detailed shell companies, payoffs, even a reference to JC Fraud Settlement 22, Jason's case. My hands shook as I snapped a photo with my phone. Why now, Clara? Why tell me this? Because I see myself in you, she said, tears brimming, and I'm tired of being afraid. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Jason. I silenced it, but Clara's eyes widened. He knows I'm here, she whispered. He tracks my car. Panic flared, but I forced it down. We'll deal with it. Come with me tonight. I'm meeting Rachel. We've got more. She nodded, and I grabbed my bag, the notebook and USB secure inside. We slipped out a side exit just as Jason's next text buzzed. Where are you? Clara's not answering either. An hour later, we met Rachel at an abandoned warehouse near the ship channel. Her idea, to avoid prying eyes. The air smelled of rust and oil as we huddled around a folding table. Clara clutching her coat while I laid out the evidence. The receipt, the USB files, her notebook. Rachel's jaw tightened as she scrolled through the screenshots. This is bigger than we thought, she said. He's not just gaslighting you, he's a criminal. There's more, I said, pulling up an email from Sarah I'd found in the personal folder. Dated last week. Jay, she's asking questions. Shut it down. His reply, she's handled. Recordings are ready if she pushes. Recordings. My blood ran cold. He's got tapes of me, I said, my voice hollow. From when I was stressed, yelling, crying. He's gonna use them. Rachel cursed, but Clara spoke up, her voice steadier now. He did that to me too. Robert kept tapes, said it proved I was unstable. It's their playbook. Before we could process it, headlights flashed through the warehouse windows, a car door slammed. Jason's voice cut through the night. Michaela? Mom? I know you're in there. My heart stopped. He'd tracked Clara's car, just like she'd feared. Rachel grabbed the laptop. Hide the evidence. I'll stall him. She slipped out the back as I shoved the USB and notebook into my bag, pulling Clara behind a stack of crates. Jason stormed in, his polished facade gone, replaced by raw fury. What the hell are you two doing? He snarled, his eyes locking on me. Sneaking around, digging through my life? You're the one hiding things, I shot back, stepping out despite Clara's grip on my arm. Fraud, Sarah? Horizon? I've got proof. He laughed, cold and sharp. Proof. You've got nothing but your delusions. One call to the Tribune, and I'll play those recordings. Show them the real Michaela, freaking out, paranoid. Your career's done. His words stung, but I held my ground. Not this time. I've got more than you think. His smirk faltered just for a second as Rachel's voice echoed from outside. Cops are on their way, Jason. Game's up. He froze, then bolted for the door. I didn't chase him, not yet. The mask had slipped, and I had everything I needed to tear it off completely. The warehouse echoed with the fading roar of Jason's car as he peeled out into the night, tires screeching against the gravel. My breath came in ragged gasps, the USB and Clara's notebook still burning a hole in my bag as I turned to her. Her face was pale, but her jaw was set, decades of silence finally broken. Rachel burst back through the door, her phone pressed to her ear. Cops are 10 minutes out, she said, panting. I told them we've got evidence of fraud. Sterling and Pierce won't bury this one. We can't wait, I said, adrenaline surging. He's running, Rachel. If he gets to the Tribune first with those recordings, he'll spin it all, make me the crazy one. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling, but steady enough to open the live stream app I'd used for breaking news. We go public. Now. Rachel's eyes widened. Michaela, that's insane. The boy... Can fire me later, I cut in, hitting go live. The screen lit up, my face reflected back at me. Disheveled, furious, alive. I held up the USB and notebook, my voice steady despite the chaos. This is Michaela Anderson from the Houston Tribune. For years, my husband, Jason Carter, has gaslighted me, made me doubt my mind, my work. But it's bigger than that. Sterling and Pierce is laundering millions through Horizon Ventures, and he's at the center. This is what gaslighting looks like, personal and corporate. Watch. I plugged the USB into Rachel's laptop, streaming the files live. Bank transfers, emails between Jason and Sarah, the Hope Rising charity fraud. Comments flooded in. Holy crap, is this real? Expose him, my phone buzzed. Jason, stop this now. I ignored it, turning to Clara. Tell them, I urged. She stepped into frame, her voice shaky but clear. I'm Clara Carter, Jason's mother. My husband, Robert, taught him how to manipulate me. Then Michaela. This notebook, she held it up, pages trembling in her hands, shows decades of their fraud. I was their first victim. No more. Sirens wailed in the distance as I kept the stream rolling, my heart pounding. The police are coming. Sterling and Pierce, Jason, Robert. They're done. I ended the feed as red and blue lights flashed through the warehouse windows. Cops stormed in, barking orders, and Rachel guided them to the evidence. I sank against a crate, the weight of it all crashing down. Clara gripped my hand, her eyes wet but resolute. Hours later, I stood in the Tribune boardroom, facing the editors who'd rejected my stories. Jason was there, cuffed and flanked by officers, his suit rumpled, his smirk gone. Robert sat beside him, stone-faced, as the chairman replayed my live stream on a projector. Now viral, with millions of views. The room was silent, the air thick with tension. Michaela, Jason said, his voice cracking as he leaned forward. You've ruined us, Mother. How could you? Clara stood, her spine straight. You ruined yourself, Jason. I'm done protecting you. She turned to the board. Robert kept tapes of me too. Called me unstable to hide his crimes. It's all here. She slid the notebook across the table, and the chairman's hand shot up to silence Robert's protest. Enough, the chairman said, his voice clipped. Mrs. Anderson, continue. I plugged my drive into the laptop, projecting Sarah's emails, the financial records, Jason's threats. He targeted me from day one, I said, my voice steady. A journalist he could control, discredit if I got too close. But I'm not the only one. Hope Rising donors deserve answers too. The board murmured, heads nodding as the SEC filed in, badges gleaming. Jason lunged, but the cops held him back. No one will believe you, he shouted, desperation cracking his facade. You're just crazy. Like your mom. No, Jason, I said, calm washing over me. I'm finally sane. The gavel fell. 15 years for him, 20 for Robert, pending trial. Sarah had flipped, her testimony sealing their fate. The room emptied, leaving me with Rachel, who grinned. You're back, Anderson. The story broke the next day. Corporate dynasty falls, father's done fraud scheme exposed. Headlines screamed across Houston, then the nation. Clara moved out, starting therapy with a real counselor, not Jason's cousin, Dr. Martinez, who'd fed him my sessions. Sterling and Pierce collapsed under audits, and Hope Rising launched a recovery fund. I took a new beat at the Tribune, corporate fraud and psychological abuse, my first series on gaslighting's hidden costs, pulling thousands of reader stories. Weeks later, I ran into Jason at the courthouse, his sentencing final. He looked smaller, defeated, no trace of the man who'd charmed me at that gala. You destroyed everything, he muttered, cuffs clinking. You did that yourself, I replied, walking away. That night, I sat at my desk, the last photo of us, our anniversary dinner, staring back at me. I deleted it, opening a new document. Trust your instincts, I typed. They're trying to tell you something. For the first time in years, I believed mine. But as I saved the file, my phone buzzed, an unknown number. You think this is over? Check your sources. My breath caught. I scanned the empty apartment, the city lights flickering beyond the window. Jason was gone, Robert too, but someone wasn't. I hit reply. Who is this? No answer. The cursor blinked, waiting, as a chill crept up my spine. The reckoning had come, but maybe not the end. I grabbed my recorder, instincts flaring. Whatever was next, I'd be ready.